Hi y'all, I just want to thank you for clicking on this video, and in honor of back to school, I would like to talk to you about the cupcake teacher and her deputy sheriff husband. Her story takes place in Denham Springs, Louisiana. Give you a warning that this is graphic and disturbing details of minors and adults, things that happen to them, so this is your chance to leave now. I wanted to talk to you about some victims. We're not going to call them victims. Some are minors and some are adults. So here, we're just going to call them Child 1 or Adult 1, Child 2 or Adult 2. We have all been through enough, so please be respectful in the comments below. Two monsters were in positions of society to make a difference in the world, but what they did was prey on the innocent. Cynthia Perkins was born to Gregory and Angela Thompson on April 13th of 1985. She had two siblings, a sister named Patricia and a brother named Paul. It seems as though she had a normal childhood. She would eventually marry a man named James Jones, and together they shared 3 children. In 2012, she was a teacher at Live Oak Middle School. In 2013, she transferred to North Oak Live Elementary School, and in 2016, she transferred to be an English teacher at Westside Junior High School. She taught there until 2019. During some time Cynthia and Jones divorced, she meets and marries a man named Dennis Warren Perkins. He was born to Warren Perkins and Rebecca Allen on August 13th of 1975. He grew up and worked in law enforcement. He meets a woman named Darla Gale Hood. They have a son, but due to allegations of domestic abuse against Dennis Perkins, they split. Let's just say that there's documentation and court filings that Dennis harassed this lady and used his position as a police officer to harass even the men she were dating. Let's just say that their divorce was not an easy one for her. Dennis did end up marrying a lady named Shannon Jackson, and it also ended in divorce. And then Dennis would meet Cynthia. He was a Livingston Parish Sheriff's deputy at the time, and she was a school teacher. They appeared to be the all-American couple to those on the outside, but this was only to cover up what they were truly doing in their home. On September 23rd of 2019, the Louisiana Bureau of Investigation received a tip from National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Their address was linked to possible production and distribution of child abuse and pornography. Investigators followed up the lead and tracked the IP address to the Perkins home, located at Rosalive Drive in Denham Springs, Louisiana. A search of the property came back with digital evidence showing inappropriate photos of children. Not only that, but there were tons of medias showing children being harmed, Denny pleasuring himself and then releasing those body fluids onto pastries, which his wife would then take to her students. Found about 60 images of a young girl aged 12 who we will call child number 1. In this case, images could mean a photo or video, so I just wanted to clarify that. Images were sexual in nature. Not only was Dennis in these photos, but also Cynthia, the school teacher. These images clearly showed this young girl's private area and showed her engaging in oral and things being done to her private areas with adult fingers, some sodomy. There were images of Denny placing genitals inside this young lady's mouth while Cynthia is shown holding this young girl's head. It's just disturbing to me, and I want you to remember that he was a cop for years and Cynthia was a school teacher for years, and no one suspected a thing in their life. What is even more alarming is that they photographed or videotaped everything they did to everyone. Between the two of these, there was 150 charges. Court documents, there's also allegations against even Dennis assaulting his dog. There were images taken of children without their knowledge. Pictures of just kids being kids, innocent to normal people. Of like just a child yawning, and Dennis would Photoshop his private parts into that photo. His wife, the teacher, Cynthia, would send him. In May 1st of 2018 and February of 2019, Dennis was seen pleasuring himself into the cupcake batter and also energy drinks. The cupcakes were then served to the children at Cynthia's school. Cynthia was well aware of what he was doing. She was seen in the photos or videos mixing the batter. Dennis had been using his position as SWAT commander in Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office to take equipment home and make child pornography. Police property being used to make child porn. Let that sink in. On October 22nd of 2019, Dennis was out on a fishing trip 4 hours away from home. He is contacted on his work phone by authorities. They had set up a meeting and they wanted to talk to him. While en route, he called on a different phone and changed the meeting place. Denny was then in a patrol car. While doing this, he had taken the work car 4 hours away from the county he worked in. Dennis agrees to answer the questions, but he let them know he had thrown his cell phone into the lake prior to the meeting. As soon as authorities asked about the images that were found, he immediately asked for an attorney. They arrest him for obstruction of justice for the tossing of his phone. He was transported back to Livingston Parish. Cynthia Perkins was not at home when Dennis was arrested, but when investigators realized Cynthia is also seen in these photos and videos and actually participating in assault, police wait on her at her house and arrest her. They ask her questions. She answers until they ask her about the photos, where she asked for an attorney. But authorities did not need these two's cooperation. They had enough evidence to put these two monsters away. Let me just read you some of the exact court filings on this case. There are exactly 150 charges against this couple. We're not going to go through all of them here because that's way too many, but I'm going to read you some of them. On May 1st, 2018 and February of 28th of 2019, the defendant committed mingling of harmful substances is a violation in Louisiana, that he intentionally mingled a harmful substance or matter with any food or drink with the intent that the same should be taken by any human being to his or her injury by ejaculating on various pastries and into bottles of energy drinks which were ingested by unsuspecting victims. Between June 1st of 2019 and June 18th of 2019, the defendant committed sexual abuse of an animal in violation of Louisiana. I'm not going to read all that. In that he knowingly and intentionally engaged in sexual contact with an animal, to wit a dog, and filmed, distributed, or possessed pornographic images of his sexual contact with the animal. Now, when I tell y'all that these two people are monsters, I seriously mean it, and I am infuriated. There are charges of first-degree rape, video voyeurism, the mingling of harmful substances, sexual abuse of an animal, production of pornography involving juvenile. I mean, the list just goes on and on. One filing, Cynthia seen wearing Child 1 school uniform and her and Dennis engaging in sexual intercourse. Cynthia and Dennis both calling Cynthia by Child 1's name, and Cynthia Perkins is seen and heard speaking in baby voice while engaging in sexual intercourse together. And Cynthia is heard saying the most disturbing things for Dennis to do while she is wearing Child 1's school uniform. Y'all let that sink in to your brain. On May 25th of 2019, Adult 1 was clearly drugged, placed in suggestive positions without her consent, while Dennis filmed and took photos of her, and Cynthia also helped to assault Adult 1. Dennis is said to have brought home drugs still in evidence bags to drug his victims and assault them. On November 2014, Adult number 2, with the help of another woman identified later as Melanie Curtin, who was Dennis's mistress, was arrested and charged in February of 2020. It's been said they roofied Adult number 2. Her head was covered and she was completely unaware of what was happening to her, as both of them assault her. This man filmed and recorded everything he ever did. So this was in 2014, and they did not get caught or arrested until 2019. So this had been going on for years. Melanie Curtin was convicted by jurors of aggravated and video voyeurism They say she was screaming and crying as she was carried out of the courtroom. The video was about 20 minutes long, and that helped her participation in the assault. Number 2 says she only recalls having a couple of drinks at his place that night and awoke to a massive hangover. She did not recall anything from that night. She actually learned about the assault on her body after she was contacted by authorities through a tattoo they discovered on her body in the photos or images. Cynthia Perkins was not fired from her job. She was allowed to resign the day after she was arrested. Let that sink in. When Child 1 was forensically interviewed, she tells how Cynthia had done to her prior to the sexual abuse. Cynthia Perkins took Child 1 by the hair and dragged her into the bathroom, slammed her face against the wall, and threw her to the ground before slapping and hitting her. She also told how once she woke up to Cynthia sitting on her bed and looking at her with a very mean face. She also says Cynthia would blame her for the problems in her previous relationship. So let's talk about that for just a minute. So let's talk about how Cynthia did this child before she started the sexual abuse on her by the violence, scaring her, intimidating her, making her fearful to talk to anyone. In Dennis's Google searches, authorities discover searches done on his device such as pretend to sleep while drunk stepdad me. So search relieving yourself on sleeping stepdaughter. Wank in your car next to a school bus. In 2013, Dennis took a video of a young girl with the camera angled up her shorts and Dennis pleasuring himself until he releases the sperm right next to the young girl's legs. 2 weeks later, he filmed 2 more girls where he once more angled the camera up their shorts and started again to pleasure himself. And at the end, it shows him relieving himself on the bed where the 2 young girls' feet were. Then covers the body fluid with a comforter. In 1988, Dennis applied for the Baton Rouge Police Department. At this time, he would have to take a polygraph test. If he answered yes to any questions, he would have to give an explanation as to why he answered yes. Let's talk a little about some of these questions that he gave answers yes. As when he was 18, he engaged in misconduct with a girl and later found out she was only 13. He also wrote in 1995 he showed his private parts for some Mardi Gras beads. He said 3 years prior he paid for oral sex and solicited sex, and 3 weeks prior to the polygraph he had solicited intercourse. He admitted to credit card fraud, but that was unsuccessful. He wrote that he had previously looked through his sister-in-law's window multiple times while she undressed. He wrote that he had sent photos of a girl to a website that were never published and that he had sex while on duty. The police board members took notes to his polygraph in comments such as he had a poor attitude, immaturity, having difficulty answering law enforcement questions, not considering victims' feelings. Dennis generally felt it was okay to do illegal activity. He had poor judgment. Every board member voted not to hire him. Somehow, Dennis was able to get hired at Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office and become head of the SWAT team. Dennis was fired after his arrest, but Livingston Parish did catch backlash. Jason Ard, who was the sheriff, had ignored the polygraph and had actually gave Dennis a recommendation of being a good person. He would make an excellent employee and that he was of good character. In 2002, Denny was given a polygraph for Livingston Sheriff's Office and labeled a high risk. In 2013, an incident occurred that would be overlooked. Todd Webb from Baton Rouge PD went to the Sheriff Ard with some concerns about Dennis. Todd stated that his stepdaughter had recently had a sleepover at Dennis's home with his daughter was a friend of hers, another child that was living in the home. The complaint states Dennis's wife at the time, who was not Cynthia, awoke to find Dennis laying in bed with the girls watching a movie. She called the child's parents and told them, and the child was never allowed to return to that home. Todd and his wife sends their child to a counselor immediately. She tells the counselor Dennis would chase her into a room, hold her down, and play Tickle Monster. He then scheduled a meeting with the Sheriff Ard and relayed his concerns to him and says he does not want Dennis anywhere near his family, or his kids. A couple days later, he is at a gas station and Dennis slowly drives around them in what he is believed to be a threat or intimidation tactic. He then goes up the chain of command to make sure Dennis' behavior would stop. But since there was no proof of a crime against this child, no charges were ever made against Dennis. But we should consider this behavior of grooming a child to me. In 2014, another complaint was made by another law enforcement officer that his wife had recently been having an affair with Dennis and that his daughter also was tickled by Dennis. There have been 4 lawsuits filed against the school district where Cynthia Perkins was handing out those cupcakes and energy drinks. I'm shocked that there is not more. One lawsuit against that school and the school board states her child had ate a cupcake and that the school board violated school policies in regard to teachers bringing homemade edible goods for students. She also states the school board failed to hire a safe and competent teacher, that they failed to do a background check on Cynthia, and failed to ensure proper procedures for the children's safety. She states she is worried about her child getting AIDS or something else. Another father stating he fallen into a deep depression after learning his child had ate these tainted cupcakes and could not hold down a job. Another mother stating she had been dealing with behavioral issues, mental health, and sleep issues since everything had been released. Another statement says Cynthia had shown students inappropriate photos. Each lawsuit listed the school board and claimed negligence on the school board's end. February of 2020, a third person was arrested. I've mentioned her earlier, Melanie Curtin. She was also from Denham Springs, Louisiana. She is listed as an unidentified woman who is seen taking advantage of adult number 2 with Dennis. She also worked at the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office. She worked in the tax department in 2011, 2012. In December of 2021, she went to trial where her attorneys argued that she was drugged and had no memory of the assault on adult number 2. When prosecutors showed the 20-minute long video showing Melanie willingly participating in the assault of adult number 2, adult 2 speaks out. She says she never knew the assault happened until the video was found. The adult number 2 had a blanket over her head and was unaware of what was happening to her. It is believed she was completely unconscious. When she learned of the video, she said she literally wanted to die. She was drugged and taken advantage of. Melanie was found guilty for aggravated assault in sexual manner and video voyeurism. Melanie is sentenced to life. February of 2022, Cynthia takes a plea deal. She will need to testify against her ex-husband. Prosecutors say all victims agreed to this plea deal in all these cases. So Cynthia ended up with 3 charges of second-degree assault in a sexual manner, mingling of harmful substances, and production of child images. She was sentenced to 41 years in prison, and she spoke and gave a statement. I just want to apologize. I want to tell you all I'm so sorry. I want to tell the entire parish of Livingston I'm so sorry. I want to tell my friends, my coworkers, I'm sorry. Will not be reading Cynthia. Also will not read the impact statements from these people's family members, sisters, mothers, fathers. They all go on there and defend these monsters, and I just will not read that on here. Cynthia is just as guilty as her husband Dennis, and she should have gotten life in prison. Pray to God she is never let out again, and that she is never ever allowed to be around another child in her life. Cynthia puts all the blame on Dennis and says she was abused. Cynthia could have threw those cupcakes away and the energy drinks before she ever gave them out at the school. No one made her send those pictures of those children to her husband. I have no sympathy for her or her family that is defending her. What I will read to you is Child 1's statement that her father read for her in court. It says, "My life is so much better. I remember every time you hurt me and how scared I was to talk to you. I think of what my life would have been like with you still in it. You're a horrible and manipulating person. You are a selfish and horrible person. I hope you're ashamed of yourself and you rot in prison. I wrote you this so you know you didn't break me down. You don't deserve to be a mom or even be free. You will forever be known as the person who hurt me. In these court documents, it says LBI subsequent forensic investigation of the extensive electronic devices confiscated uncovered over 5 terabytes of encrypted data backed up to and from various electronic devices owned or used by Dennis and Cynthia Perkins. For perspective, there are 1,000 gigabytes and 1 terabyte of data. More smartphones today operate with an average of 64 gigabytes. The average high-quality photo is approximately 3.5 megabytes, and there are 1,000 megabytes and 1 gigabyte. In these court documents, there's a number 2. It's called Juvenile Rape Fantasy, a written note that they found on Cynthia Perkins' cell phone. It's dated on or about May 8th of 2019. Outlines in great detail sexual acts an adult male and adult female would or did engage in with an unnamed child, 12 years old girl. It states, we explained to her our daughter has been a really bad girl. We explained that our daughter is too young to be punished. Therefore, we found her for this reason. She will receive the punishments that our daughter deserves. She tries to explain that she is still only 11, but tomorrow is her 12th birthday. The note goes on to describe the child being bound and gagged before the sexual acts are forced upon her by the adult male, such as oral sex upon the adult male forced by the victim's mouth, the juvenile victim being dragged by her hair by the adult female onto the bed, and the adult male fondling the victim's breast, while she is forced to conduct oral sex on the adult male. The note further states that during these acts, the victim is silently crying and has tears streaming down her face. Our document goes on to state that the note was created on May 8th, 2019, which is during the time frame that the defendants actually engaged in essays and other unlawful sexual contact with juvenile 1. This court document goes on to say this evidence is admissible under LACE Art 412-2 as it clearly displays Cynthia Perkins' lustful disposition towards children. Hey y'all, let's move on because this is just disturbing. Let's move on to this Dennis Perkins, this monster. At first, Dennis Perkins wanted to go to trial, but in January of 2023, he pled guilty to a few charges and was sentenced to 100 years in prison. He is also not eligible for parole or an appeal. Everyone seemed happy with this outcome, and without having to put these children and these adult victims on the stand to only harm them more. I wanted to share this story with you all because Dennis just went to prison in January of 2023, and I also want to make you aware that everyone who harms children doesn't look like it. They're not the statistic. There are some nice looking, good looking people who have upstanding jobs in the community who have took an oath to save people and help people, but instead they are destroying people. My thoughts and prayers go out to these young children and these adults who were harmed by these monsters. Y'all, please be aware of who your kids are around. Please be aware of any signs that they are displaying outbursts, anything like that. Please protect your children. If you don't protect them, no one will. Y'all stay safe out there, and thank you for listening.